Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session, Water for Food in a Changing Climate, Pathways to Adaptation and Mitigation, where we look at opportunities through innovation. This is the first segment of a three-part seminar series co-hosted by the Dottery Water for Food Global Institute, the International Water Management Institute, and Clarity Consortium. This session will explore the tensions between adaptation and mitigation co-benefits, as well as the trade-offs of agriculture water management innovations. We will explore this through water innovations in rice systems, water soil management, and renewable energy. My name is Petra Schmitter. I'm the global lead on climate mitigation adaptation pathways with the International Water Management Institute, and today your session host. While we wait, as you all are logging in, I'd like to explain the format for today. So we have some pre-recorded videos of our panelists for you, in which they will briefly explain their innovations. We will then place them together with you on virtual hot seats to learn more about what their innovations really bring in terms of both adaptation and mitigation and what the potential trade-offs could be in the water space. So I would really like you to make sure that you pose your questions to those panelists in the chat as you listen to the videos. So let's pause for a moment to really consider just how much climate change is reshaping our water resources and food systems. Did you know that by 2050, climate change could potentially put anybody up to 100 million people at risk of hunger? Or that over 1 billion people already live in very water scarce areas, facing severe water shortages on a day-to-day basis? How much percentage of global greenhouse gas emissions do you really think come from agri-food systems? It's a staggering 30+%. And that's not all. At the same time, we're dealing with over 170 million hectares of rain-fed agriculture in high to very high drought frequencies. So without a doubt, water sits at the heart of how we adapt our food systems. And it's a challenge because at the same time, we know that global irrigation water withdrawals will increase to over 100% between 2040 and 21. So it means that we really need to imagine how we're going to deal with the already strained water resources that we have. Now, we often design climate adaptation solutions in a current state. We think about, okay, how can we at the moment adapt? But a lot of those solutions will lose their effectiveness as the world warms beyond 2 degrees. So we need to make sure that we design these solutions not only for the current status, but really with the future in mind. And then at the same time, we address the challenges of greenhouse gas reductions. So this session is really looking at both sides of the coin and make sure that we can tackle both adaptation and mitigation strategies in a way that we also manage our water resources sustainably. Because sometimes by achieving one goal, we can unintentionally undermine the other. So, for example, think about energy intensive irrigation in arid regions, which might help very much the adaptation story, but could increase greenhouse gas emissions if we are reliant on fossil fuels. Or if we look at afforestation for carbon sequestration, we might reduce water yields in semi-arid regions, impacting irrigation and threatening food security. So today's session is really about how do we bring those different needs and goals together? How do we manage trade-offs? And how do we bridge actually the different demands that we put on our water resources? So we really need to find a balance. Now, before we listen to the videos, I would like to introduce the panelists to you that we will have today. So we have Professor Yahaya Natsumu, Department of Geology, Faculty of Sciences and Techniques from Abdul Muni University of Niamey, Niger. He's a hydrogeologist specializing in water resources, water supply and sanitation, climate change, and adaptation strategies. We also have Amit Saroji. He's the CEO and co-founder of Orja Solutions, a farming as a service company using solar irrigation in India. We have the research assistant, Professor Beatriz Moreno Garcia. She's from the Department of Biological Agricultural Engineering at the University of Arkansas, where she studies innovations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in rice fields. And last but not least, we have Dr. Orjan Berglund from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. He is an agronomist and
Petra, we lost your audio
oh, sorry. Did we, when did you lose me?
about 5 seconds back. So maybe if you repeat a couple of sentences.
Okay, so who did I manage to not introduce? I apologize for that.
You were introducing Orjan.
Oh, okay. So, last but not least, so let me go back to Amit. Amit Saroji, the CEO and co-founder of Orja Solutions, a farming as a service company using solar irrigation in India. We have the research assistant, Professor Beatriz Morena Garcia, Department of Biological and Agricultural Engineering at the University of Arkansas, where she studied innovations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in rice fields. And last but not least, we have Dr. Orjan Berglund from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. He's an agronomist and researcher at SLU, specializing in peat soils and greenhouse gas emissions. So with that, I would like to kickstart the first video. Do keep your questions and put them in the chat, please. We will address them after we have listened to the four speakers introducing their solutions.
Et comme vous savez, le Niger est un pays où l'essentiel de la production agricole est basé sur la production, j'allais dire, pluviale, des eaux de pluie. C'est pour ça qu'ils doivent jouer un rôle important. Par le passé, dès l'indépendance, nous avons opté pour le développement de l'irrigation pour soutenir la production agricole et lutter contre l'insécurité alimentaire. Nous l'avons essayé pendant 60 ans avec plus ou moins de succès, mais il est grand temps aujourd'hui, dans le cadre du changement climatique et tenant compte du fait que la variabilité va augmenter, mais également les événements extrêmes tels que les inondations vont augmenter. Il est question qu'on regarde peut-être un peu plus en profondeur sur nos ressources et sur nos capacités de manière globale. Eau de surface, oui, mais pourquoi pas l'eau souterraine? Et c'est en ce sens-là que l'eau souterraine arrive à point nommé pour nous renforcer dans notre conviction et dans notre choix de développement de l'irrigation. Le Niger est un pays qui est idéalement situé au cœur de l'Afrique et dans la zone où la température est la plus importante durant l'année. Et donc, cela devient un potentiel pour un pays qui cherche de l'énergie et surtout un pays qui a quand même encore aujourd'hui des difficultés dans l'approvisionnement en énergie malgré toutes les potentialités donc, de sources d'énergie telles que l'uranium dont il possède. Et c'est en ce sens-là que dès le début des années 80, quand le solaire a commencé à se pointer, l'intérêt du Niger pour le solaire était là. J'allais dire plus de 95% du Niger n'a pas accès à de l'énergie, j'allais dire, à bon marché. Le solaire est partout, le solaire est partout. Et donc, les pompes solaires est une bonne opportunité que aujourd'hui nos populations, n'est-ce pas, s'arrachent. Les prix sont variables, les qualités aussi le sont. Mais ce que veut un fermier, c'est une pompe rustique qui va durer longtemps, mais qui lui permet donc de recouvrir son investissement. Et c'est cela ce que cherchent les Nigériens. Malheureusement, des fois les coûts sont un peu au-delà des capacités des populations. Et donc on peut espérer, si les coûts peuvent baisser, que le coût puisse baisser d'ici quelques années, mais en même temps qu'il y ait encore davantage d'engouement vers ces pompes solaires. Donc les pompes solaires est une aubaine pour les Nigériens, mais un appui, que ce soit donc des partenaires, mais également de l'État. Et j'allais dire un climat, j'allais dire économique favorable peut permettre aujourd'hui aux pompes solaires d'être encore davantage vulgarisées pour la production agricole au grand bien de toutes nos populations et surtout de manière à atteindre la totalité, j'allais dire, du pays pour produire encore un maximum donc, de produits agricoles. Et comme vous savez,
Hi, my name is Amit Saraugi. I am the CEO and co-founder of Urja Solutions. Our mission is to decarbonize agriculture by displacing diesel in favor of solar to meet energy needs on the farm. Today, I'm here to discuss the core benefits and trade-offs of adaptation and mitigation with regards to solar irrigation. Is solar irrigation really a win-win? Can it truly help Indian smallholder farmers adapt to climate change while combating it? Most smallholder farmers we work with grow rice or maize during monsoon and wheat in the winter. Their land sits idle for 3 to 4 months in the summer because irrigation is too expensive. They confront climate variability, are compelled to use expensive diesel pumps. Now, solar irrigation offers affordable and reliable water access year-round, allowing farmers to grow a profitable third crop in the summer. It replaces diesel pumps, cuts cost and emissions by up to 50%, and can increase yields and incomes by nearly 50 to 100%. Although the challenge is at zero marginal cost, solar pumps can lead to overpumping of water. India already extracts far more groundwater than monsoons can replenish. Poorly designed programs risk worsening the water crisis. For instance, in the state of Jharkhand, solar pumps allowed farmers to cultivate previously fallow summer land and increase income by up to 30-35%. However, water use also increased significantly. A service-based model can address the problem. When 15 to 20 farmers share a solar pump through irrigation as a service, a model pioneered by us, professional operators monitor water use, metered service at fixed tariff, avoid overpumping, reduce costs by 20 to 60%, and diversify access for women and tenant farmers. But water access alone isn't enough. Farmers need guidance on crop selection, inputs, timing, pest control, and access to markets. So, bundling irrigation with climate-smart agronomy training helps farmers optimize water use and transition from flood to precision irrigation, such as drip, sprinklers, etc. Without this support, the risk of unsustainable practices remain and rise. Solar pumps can make it easier to over-extract water, but there are solutions, which include community water management, diversifying into less water-intensive crops, especially in water-stressed regions, and service-based models that place limits on water use. Regular monitoring of water depletion and recharging of borewells is an imperative. The truth is, solar irrigation isn't automatically climate positive. If it drives deforestation, groundwater depletion, or more chemical use, it can do harm. But when paired with innovative water management, climate smart advisory, and inclusive business models, it can become a powerful tool for climate mitigation and adaptation.
Hi, I'm Örjan Berglund, a soil scientist and researcher at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. My work focuses on greenhouse gas emissions from cultivated peat soils. Much of the peatlands were drained starting in the mid-19th century at the end of what is known as the Little Ice Age. Faced with food insecurity and mass emigration to North America, the Swedish government initiated large-scale drainage programs to create new farmland. Farmers were encouraged and sometimes compelled to drain peatlands and lower lakes. A large canal you see in this drone footage is part of that legacy. Today these drained peatlands emit large amounts of CO2, yet they remain vital for food and fodder, especially in dry years. Our challenge is, how can we manage them more sustainably? In our field trials, we are testing various approaches to reduce emissions from cultivated peat soils, targeting both mitigation and adaptation goals. We have had promising results with adding mineral soil to peat, which improves stability and significantly reduces CO2 emissions. A key focus is water table management. We use precise field lysimeters like these you see in the picture. These are PVC pipes pressed down through the peat to the underlying chicha, about a meter deep, allowing us to regulate the water table. Our covers prevent precipitation from altering our controlled water levels. This lets us accurately measure the water table depth and monitor our greenhouse gas emissions under different conditions, comparing a water table of -40 cm and -10 cm with freely drained conditions. We are also exploring sprinkler irrigation to keep the topsoil moist and potentially lower CO2 emissions further. Our strategies we have tried include comparing grasses such as reed canary grass, which shows promise due to its tolerance of wet conditions. We also test liming to reduce nitrous oxide emissions and compacting the soil to slow decomposition and adding wood chips to increase the carbon to nitrogen ratio. Managing these soils is a balancing act. We aim to reduce emissions while maintaining productivity and accessibility for farmers. For instance, raising the water table can reduce emissions, but may also lower yields or limit machinery access. Liming and other soil amendments may work in one context, but require careful evaluation in another. Our goal is to identify practical and scalable strategies that reduce emissions while ensuring food security. This work primarily benefits farmers, managing organic soils, and policymakers aiming for climate targets through agriculture, ultimately contributing to resilient, productive, and climate-smart food systems.
Hello, I'm Beatriz Moreno. I'm a research assistant professor at the University of Arkansas in the United States. I work with rice farmers that are implementing a new practice to increase the sustainability of their farms. Rice crop is grown traditionally under flooded conditions. Because of that, rice is a large water consumer. So if we look globally at the water withdrawals, 30% of them are used to irrigate rice. Because of these flooded conditions in the soil, swampy conditions, methane is produced. So globally, 10% of the total methane anthropogenic emissions comes from rice. So that's why our focus is to reduce water use and methane emissions in rice production. One of the practices that can be used to mitigate these methane emissions is called alternate wetting and drying. When we implement this practice, instead to have the field continuously flooded, we will allow the soil to dry down in some periods. So we will reduce the period when the soil is inundated. And that way we will reduce water use, and at the same time, we will decrease methane emissions. Our research group measures the flax emissions in the rice fields. We use different methods. So we use the covariance method, and we also use the closed chamber technique. And we measure the emissions all year round. So we have proven that using this water management, the alternate wetting and drying, we can decrease emissions by 65 up to 80%. What are the possible trade-offs of this practice? So one possible trade-off will be the yield decrease. But what we have seen so far is that if the dry periods are well managed and they don't happen when there is a critical period for the crop, then we haven't seen yield decrease. So in summary, farmers can benefit of this practice because they can save water, save energy to pump that water, and then at the end, save money. And at the same time, we are decreasing global warming potential from rice production.
Thank you very much, Paula, for showing the videos. So now we'd like to ask the panelists to switch on their cameras in case they have not, so that they're ready to answer a few questions that I have already for them. I hope in the meantime we're also collecting some questions in the chat. Let me first start with Professor Natsumo. So solar irrigation is often presented as a dual solution for climate adaptation and mitigation in Africa. Is the main entry point, according to you, for scaling irrigation in Niger more on the adaptation side or on the mitigation side? Oh, have we lost Professor Natsumo? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, I think we have a little technical problem here. So whilst we...
Are you hearing me?
Yes. Hello, Professor.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for all participants because unfortunately it is raining in Niger and even Starlink is not able to work to connect me to you. But I'm here. I'm glad to see everyone. Yeah. Regarding your question, thank you, moderator. I think that the main setting point for developing irrigation in Niger is adaptation, definitively. Because in line with the National Development Priority set out in its strategic document since 2000, Niger developed its National Action Program for Adaptation to Climate Change, what we call NAPA, in 2006, in which the country identified its priorities for fighting against adverse effects of climate change. These priorities were then specified in the national determined contributions submitted by the country in 2015. And the National Energy Compact Program adopted in 2024 aims to increase the access to energy in the country, which is currently around 21%. So they plan to increase it by 40% per year, in particular through the promotion of renewable energy. So Niger priorities are to ensure the food security, fight poverty, and also finally contribute to the reduction of global greenhouse gas. Adaptation is therefore essential for our country, but the country favors adaptation action with strong co-benefit, such as using of solar pump for water extraction, for irrigation, and also even for the water supply in terms of drinking water for population. So I think that Niger is not listed in the Annex 1 of the UNFCCC. Niger has so that Niger has no quantified mitigation obligation, but the priority is that to prioritize adaptation to fight food security or insecurity, and also to mitigate, so to reduce greenhouse emission. And also due to the fact that we are various variability in terms of agriculture production, we are not able to produce every year what we need. So there is a great light in terms of using solar energy. So people are now aware that they can use it to reduce the cost of irrigation and to produce sufficient product that they need to eat.
Yeah, no, super. Thanks for that, Professor. So I have one very short additional question before I jump to Amit. We know that solar irrigation in several countries, especially in Africa, are super expensive, right? They still have very high upfront investment costs. How do you think Niger really can deliver on its irrigation goal, solar irrigation goal?
Yeah, Niger is a country with a very low income in terms of related to population, and also due to some change in terms of political aspect, we face a kind of difficulties in terms of financing funding. But since several years, the government are pushing population to use solar energy to withdraw water from groundwater. And the main I think factor that limited this aspect, it is the availability of fund. But I think that the reduction of the investment cost can be reduced through some subsidies for the equipment. For example, the country can use climate finance, for example, source to subsidize solar pump in our country so that the price can be lower and can be accessible to a more larger population than what we have now. But the program now is still also regarding some very, very large agriculture farmer funded by the government. And in all these large farmer, the objective is to reduce the cost of energy for pumping by using solar energy. So this is something that is maybe will be grower in terms of using solar energy by our own funding coming from the government, but also I think we can enhance it by using finance coming for climate change.
Thanks, Professor. And I think that's a very good segue to my question for Mr. Amit. Because with Orja Solutions, you're actually developing and providing irrigation as a service, which is actually aimed to really address the needs of, smallholder farmers and the bottom of the pyramids. But we still see that we can sometimes widen inequities, unintentionally if we skew it towards wealthier farmers. So how do you really ensure that your services are ending up with smallholder farmers that are most vulnerable to climate change?
Yeah, thanks, Petra, for that question. I'm happy to be here. And yeah, so thanks for having me. Sure, I will address that question. So I have been a practitioner in India in the water irrigation sector for quite a while now, 9-10 years. We've deployed hundreds of solar pumps and serving the needs of more than 50,000 farmers today. We designed, very consciously and specifically our solution for smallholder farmers. So smallholder farmers, well, just to understand the demographics, about 60% of Indian population derives its livelihood from agriculture, directly or indirectly, of which 80% are actually smallholder farmers, that is with less than 2 acres of land holding. They are highly reliant on fossil fuel-based technologies, specifically diesel. They use diesel motors for all their energy needs, including irrigation on the farm. So the challenge was to displace diesel in favor of renewables, and solar made the most sense. The prices have been declining over time, but still, like you said in your earlier question, the upfront cost barrier does exist. And so while the middle income and the higher income farmers can afford these solar pumps, smallholder farmers still don't have the capital to invest in those. And that pushed us to come up with a business model innovation. And that's what is irrigation as a service. So here, the farmer doesn't need to own the asset or buy the technology, but we offer it as a utility, as a service, right? So how that works is that, and it's community driven in our case. How this works is we, first do a very solid, robust site selection process where the impact will be great. There is through a needs assessment that farmers actually need, and they're spending a lot on the alternative, which is diesel. And then we form a group of 15 farmers and then install that asset, which sits on our books, and we own and operate them for their full lifetime, which is about 15 years. And we have regular touch points. We have foot on the ground, and yeah, we service those pumps, so they are running all along. Now, irrigation as a service, how does it work is it's metered and it is sold on a volumetric basis to these farmers. And there's a fixed tariff, like it said in the video as well. And then according to their need, they pump water. And it's community driven in the sense that there is a farmer operator, and it's the community themselves that do the daily management of giving water. And based on how much meter cubes of water they use for a particular irrigation cycle, depending on the crop they are irrigating, they will pay based on that fixed tariff. So that's the model allows them, and it is also kind of in sync with their cash flows, right? So only when they irrigate and harvest, they do need to pay. and it allows them, that flexibility as well. And therefore, it definitely works for smallholder farmers. We don't have a marketing budget. We see word of mouth adoption, and that's how we've been scaling this. So yeah, and whereas the higher income farmers, of course, have access to other modes of And just to address one small point that you had asked, Professor, as well, is generally, you will see that there is demand side subsidies or microfinance being offered, but we are addressing the challenge at the supply side by making it affordable, reliable, cheaper, available on demand. So
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. I have another side question actually on that, because I mean we all know that in certain places in India there is, severe declines of groundwater. There is a lot of narrative around, oh, if you move from diesel to solar, there's a zero marginal cost, we will continue to deplete groundwater. And so when you now move to irrigation as a service, would that even further increase the potential of overexploiting your groundwater resources? What do you think is there the solution on how we will balance that?
that's definitely a very, very valid concern. Because yes, diesel pumps, of course, there's the fuel cost, right? There's a running cost. With solar, there is no running cost. But like I said, so we do take several measures to do this. We're very conscious about this. We don't want to worsen the problem. I will list a few things, and if someone has a question, I can elaborate later. One, our water is priced as well, even though it is affordable and cheaper than the alternative by nearly 20-60%. But it's still priced. So it disincentivizes farmers to overuse. Generally, in India, the practice, and especially the kind of farmers we work with that grow paddy, that is rice, wheat, maize, they over extract, they do flood irrigation. But if the water is priced, and because in the alternative scenario, when government subsidies are offered on capital assets like solar pumps, then it becomes free for them. So then they will continue that same practice of flood irrigation. In our case, because they have to pay a price for it, they will be obviously more conscious. But that's obviously not enough. We are also very conscious of where we deploy our assets. So we consciously do not go to any water stress regions. So we work mostly in the Indo-Gangetic plain, which is very water rich still. We have developed an in-house tool to monitor annual water use and replenishment rate based on the rainfall data as well. So we definitely use that. We consciously do not dig. So groundwater is the source of water for irrigation in our case. And we do not dig. So we have to dig bore wells to draw that water out. We do not dig beyond a certain depth. So we stop at a certain depth because we know going beyond that will make the problem worse. But lastly, I would say, unless you pair it, so it's like, if you give someone a car but don't teach them how to drive, the car is of no use to them. So here we are offering a solution, a more cleaner solution, which helps mitigation. But how do you also make them adapt is through climate smart farm advisory. So we have agronomists on the team. We have a full-fledged farm advisory team that works on a day-to-day basis through demonstrations, workshops with these farmers, and teaches them and tells them new sustainable techniques. One of which I will mention here is system of rice intensification. There's also system of wheat intensification, but taking the example of system of rice intensification, it basically tells the farmers to sow their seeds at a certain distance, which then allows them to increase their yield by nearly 20-30%, which means for the same parcel of land, and maybe for the same consumption of water, the production is going up, which means on average, per quintal or hectare or per your water consumption is decreasing, right? So that's how you try and make them adapt to something like this. Besides that, we also offer soil health test services, and then tell them the kind of inputs they should use to retain moisture for longer, and so on and so forth. So there are quite a few different things that we're packaging and bundling things together, because we're not looking at things in isolation, but rather as a package to balance both mitigation and adaptation.
And if you need to, you call on Professor Garcia, I assume, because she knows everything about cutting methane emissions, right, in rice production. So Beatrice, if I could ask a question to you, we know that rice production, of course, is a major methane emitter. You've talked about that in your video. So how does your work also, that is mainly in the US, as far as I understand, addresses the challenges around adoption? So how do you go from, testing your solution, showing what works into, farmers being able to adopt your practices, especially given, the different needs also in the global north versus other countries, that produce rice in different conditions. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, thank you, Petra, for the question. Yeah, so really like the practice I was talking about in the video that is called alternate wetting and drying, it doesn't require a lot of resources or investment. So you just allow the soil dry down. If like farmers can install just a PVC pipe with holes, like make a hole, put that in the ground so they can check how much the water table is decreasing below zero. So like to be safe, but to be safe, they can just allow the soil to be muddy and reflect again. And it's not really like, this practice was first developed by the IRRI, the International Rice Research Institute in Philippines. And it's been adopted in many countries around the world. Even like in different countries, even not calling AWD, but farmers usually do what they call the mid-season drainage. That is basically they drain the field for application of chemicals, herbicides. So it's also like AWD because they are allowing to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. I would say that one of the challenge, and in this case, it will be even from my experience, it will be more even for big farmers. That is sometimes is related to the farmer logistics, or whenever, like especially in big farms, what I have seen here is that farmers are irrigating rice and corn and soybean, and they have a well and they are sharing that well with different fields, so, and big fields. So in those cases, sometimes it's challenging, like manage the irrigation. So I would say that from that perspective, it might be even like easier to manage AWD for small farmers with small fields, where you can control better that the water level in a small field, rather than here that we have like some of the fields are 50 hectares, so they are huge.
That's a different size. It's definitely a different size. So if a farmer actually has different crops, do you really think your innovation of water saving, so to speak, on the rice section is going to really help groundwaters from continuing to decline? Do you think they would actually then allocate that water savings, quote unquote, to their other crops? Or do you really see a positive effect on groundwater resources in those locations overall?
Yeah, that's like what I have heard from the farmers is that they always tell me like, we need to we keep like drilling like deeper wells compared to our grandparents, because they are noticing that they need, the groundwater levels are declining, and we have seen that, like especially in the area that we work in Arkansas, it is a what they call critical groundwater area, because we have seen that decline. So we hope to see the aquifer levels like going back, but this is really long term. So we haven't seen anything so far, but we have also college at the USDA, like they are like monitoring aquifer levels, and even trying to recharge the aquifer. So we hope to see that in the long term, but for sure it's something that is like we install flow meters in the field, we see how we are saving water implementing some of this practice, but it's really challenging in the short term to see the aquifer, the levels in the aquifer, but we hope to see that in the long term.
Okay, to be continued, I would say, right? So, well, managing a rice field is one thing, managing water and feed box is another, I think. So, Orjan, in Sweden, we know these are vital carbon sinks, aiding mitigation whilst also regulating water for agriculture. So, how does your work really manage the trade-offs between maximizing carbon storage and ensuring water availability for productive uses? Can you elaborate a little bit more from what we already heard in your video?
Yeah, thank you very much. So my research as SLU addressed this historical drainage of the Swedish peatlands, initiated in the mid-19th century as a response for the food insecurity we had at that time, and mass emigration. So we had really lack of food. And today these drained peatlands emit substantial amount of CO2, yet they remain crucial for agriculture, particularly during the dry years. So cultivated peat soils notably serve as an essential insurance for further production in exceptionally dry years such as 2018, and due to the high water holding capacity. And our challenge is, of course, to manage this land sustainable. And so that's why we have a lot of field trials to try to find the solutions. So we tested multiple strategies to balance the carbon sequestration with agriculture productivity. And the key innovation has been precise water table management. It's quite hard. So in our research, we employ advanced field lysimeters. It's PVC pipes inserted into the underlying gytja that you saw in the movies, to precisely regulate the water table. And then we compare -40 with -10, and also compare with a regular free drainage to see what happens with emissions. Additionally, we also found promising results with adding mineral soil to the peat soil, and that improves stability and significantly reduce emissions. And when these soils get very wet, it's very hard for the tractors to go there. So that's why it might be a good idea to add some mineral soils to them. Other strategies that we would like to look more into is using sprinkler irrigation to make the topsoil very wet to reduce emissions during cropping period, but we would like to see how that works. And other strategies might be liming to reduce nitrous oxide emissions, and we also look into different grasses due to the different tolerance for wetter conditions. So these are the things we are looking into at the moment.
Well, that's very interesting because when you would irrigate, you would actually, again, use water, I guess, to mitigate. So does it matter which crops you actually cultivate on those lands? Can it be anything?
Yeah, well, the main thing is that they are drained, really. And when you have the drainage, you let the air inside, and then you will have the carbon dioxide emissions. So that is the main thing. The crop doesn't really matter. One thing that we have seen is that if you have grasses that are more or less perennial, they will reduce nitrous oxide emissions since they take the nitrogen also during the off season. Whereas, for example, carrots and potato might be bare, and then you might lose nitrous oxide during that time.
Okay, super. So there are quite a number of more questions in the chat. So let's try to go through them for the remaining of the time that we still have. And I'm going to start with you, Orjan. So there's a question around scalability, which I think is not only, towards you. We're going to go and ask all the panelists. But what are some of the unique challenges that you face in terms of implementing these solutions? And when you start thinking about scaling those, right? What are potential barriers in wide scale adoption?
Yeah, so first of all, there's no one solution that fits all, so that is crucial. So you really need to look into the different sites. Some sites might be better for large scale work with large scale. So we have a lot of places where the subsidence has been so far gone that you have to pump water out from a large scale. And of course, just quitting pumping would be quite large scale and filling it up. But then, on the other hand, you would lose the productivity. So we have a lot of some researchers work more with like polluted culture or re-wetting and restoring. my main focus is looking into keeping the productivity, and then you could look into, you really need the knowledge to see what options you have. And also in Sweden, comparing to the Netherlands, in Netherlands the farmer might have one huge field that is just peat. In Sweden, it's more like it might be 10% of your total area. So it's like more specific areas, and then you would, with consultants, you would find the right solution if it's raising the water table, if it's choosing a crop that could have higher groundwater, or if you should maybe use mineral soil. So that is, I think, the main idea, to be very precise.
Okay, no, that's super interesting. And coming back to you, Beatrice, I mean, you talked about, already the size being a potential influencer, let's say, of how you adapted. And how do you think about the knowledge, the knowledge capacity side? Is there a certain barrier to scale, or are there investment related barriers? Is it awareness?
Sorry, can you repeat about the knowledge?
Yeah, no, the question is like, besides, potential technical managerial questions, right, about sizes, rotations, etc. What are some other additional barriers? I think that's an overall question mark, right? Is it about awareness? How come it's not yet adopted, given that AWD already exists for, I think, more or less a decade now? So why is not every rice farmer across the globe yet applying that, if it's so,
Okay, yeah, sometimes it's about knowledge. Like we had like a project with 10 farmers, and like there were some of them that were for sure early adopters. They knew about this practice, but there were others that they say, yeah, I learned first time about methane because of your work, so like really like the work we do sometimes, like the extension work, like working with the farmers and like transfer that knowledge, I think is valuable. And sometimes it's what I mentioned before, like managing the irrigation at the farm level, and especially like here that farms are managing like sometimes like 2,000 hectares, for example, like it's really challenging. So sometimes like those are the barriers. Like sometimes the farmers just told me like, for me, like it's easy to keep irrigating and maybe don't worry about I need to drain this field. But the good thing is that indeed, even they don't know, sometimes they do it, because what we found in our project, where we have like water levels in different fields, we found that many farmers were doing AWD without noticing, just because unintentional like fields were sometimes dry, just because of that big the size of the fields. Like sometimes like they just go dry.
Adaptation.
So yeah, exactly. So sometimes it's like they don't even know, and it's hard for them to pay attention and say, I'm going to do AWD in this field. But indeed, they sometimes are doing it without noticing.
Yeah. One side, there was one person in the chat who was asking, and you mentioned already the studies with IRRI as well, like the methane emissions for rice under AWD, how different are these reductions in temperate versus tropical regions?
Yeah.
Can you quickly elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think like there are like several, like especially on AWD, several works published around the world, and like the percentage might be different for sure, the reductions, but for sure, like methane is reduced just because we go from having flooded, anaerobic, non-oxic conditions in the soil to dry conditions. So, and that has been like in Asia, where the climate is different than here, with even 2 or 3 crops, like rice crops in the year. So yeah, I would say like percentage might be different, but for sure there is a consensus like that AWD reduce methane emissions.
Oh, yeah, super. One last question to our two solar panelists. So there's a question, Amit, for you in terms of irrigation as a service, especially for women. Farmers, do you see that promoting this model for female farmers is particularly attractive, or are there additional challenges for women to access irrigation as a service versus ownership modalities?
So, no, I mean, given the environment we work in, I don't know who's asking this question, but in India and especially in North India, we have a very patriarchal setup. So women in general, although they work on farms, in fact, most of the labor, 60% of the labor on farm comes from women. They have their assigned roles. The entire family as a household unit works on farms, but they are not owners of farms generally. They don't have ownership of farms. And similarly, they don't have ownership of assets because they're not while they're working on farms, they're not considered as the income generating member of the household. And therefore, a service-based model actually makes it easier for them to access because anyway they're working on the farm, so a man or a woman doesn't matter. Anyone can come and ask us for that service or can sign up for a membership. In fact, now again, very consciously, we've been because gender mainstreaming is one of our objectives. We have signing at least 50% of the farmers we sign up as our members is women. So we are focusing a lot on women. As you saw in the video as well, all the training is being provided to women to include them along the entire value chain, not just as consumers of the service, but also as technicians and in other roles as well within the company. So.
Super, thanks, Amit. And I don't know if Professor Yahaya is still online because I realize he has a big rain event outside of his office. But just in case that we still have you online, going back to Niger, we also see that often solar irrigation is framed in terms of food security, poverty reduction. So how can we also actually help and position solar irrigation to drive market expansion and agricultural diversification, job creation? What is your vision around that? That was also a question from the audience in the chat, but I'm not sure I see Professor Yahaya. He did rejoin us, but apparently he is not able to speak at the moment. Could someone please give him speaking rights again?
Yeah.
Yes. Yahaya? No, we heard you there for a second.
Yeah. Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Yeah, the question was there was a question in the chat around using solar irrigation also as an opportunity, not only for food security and subsistence farming, but actually for more market expansion and job creation. And we were just wondering in Niger how you see this happening.
Yeah, really, as you know, in Niger, we have something around 75% of our population are less than 25 years. We have a lot of younger. So I think that using solar pump for irrigation on the globally developing irrigation in our country can have several aspects in terms of supporting, for example, fighting food insecurity, as I say, and also fighting the poverty. But mostly, if we think about the younger, providing a large scale of job for all these youngers in our country. And you know also, in our area, we are facing some kind of insecurity and terrorism, which on my point of view, find his bad or his reason in terms of on the financial security of financial situation of people. So providing job for a lot of people using pump to irrigate and to produce a lot of can also use fighting insecurity really in our region, and also enhance the capacity of people to get money for their needs. So I don't know if I respond to your question as
Very
I
much
understand.
so. Thank you, Professor. And with that, unfortunately, we are almost at the end of our webinar today. So I'm gonna thank all the panelists for their insights, sharing their innovations, their thoughts. So thank you very much. Also the audience, thank you for all your questions. I would like to now hand over to Dr. Nicole Lefleur, Associate Research Professor in Sustainable Agricultural Water at the Dorothy Water for Food Global Institute, for her final remarks. Could you please make sure that she's able to speak? Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much to our fantastic speakers. Thank you for Petra for such a fantastic job as our moderator. And we appreciate all of the participants who engaged with us for the last hour. As you've heard, I'd like to just sum up for a second. Agriculture is a major producer of greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also heavily affected by climate change. So adaptation is also really important. The positive note is that agriculture also presents us with some of the most promising opportunities for mitigation. So the important thing will be to capitalize and to realize those improvements and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but not reduce food production and not put some people worse off. Smallholder farmers in particular produce a significant amount of food globally, and they're also the ones that are heavily affected by climate change. And we don't want to overburden them with the responsibility of mitigation. And as you've heard today, single technologies or single practices don't really provide a single solution to either adaptation or mitigation. And historically, we have kept these two issues separately. We focused either on mitigation goals or we focused on adaptation goals. And we've heard that mitigation might decrease yields, for example, in some cases in peat. But we've also heard that adaptation could affect greenhouse gas emissions, but at the same time increase food production. So there is a tension in a lot of cases between our goals for adaptation and mitigation. So the message really here is that we have to consider mitigation and adaptation together, specific to the context as well, in order to start to reduce the tensions between the goals and to identify those win-win options. But the ultimate aim is to achieve co-benefits and avoid maladaptation over time. So that's a summary of today's discussion. I hope you've enjoyed our speakers and our case studies, and that you will join us for the next session on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., both in person and online. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and thank you everyone once again for joining. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.